Behold, the entirety of my Marvel Legends action figure collection. Let's get this back a little bit. There we go. Well, hello there everybody, I'm Photo Dave, this is Toypixx, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about what the Marvel Legends team could do to bring me back as a Marvel Legends collector, as someone who digs taking photos of their figures. But there are a couple things that we need to talk about first, so let's get to those. Okay, so before we get into those two things I want to talk about, first thing, I want to talk about why I ended up getting out of Legends, and this was back when they were $19.99. Today, I can't even imagine starting Legends, but let's go with this. One day I was sitting down and I looked up on some shelves and I thought, wow, I've spent $20 a piece for the majority of those, and most of them have the same few bodies with just different heads and different paint jobs, and that's not worth $20. And so at that point, I decided these can go, because I just started getting some Mafex figures, and I just loved everything about how well they moved. Yes, they're pricier, but they fit what I wanted as far as what I consider photogenic figures a lot more. That said, Marvel Legends could bring me back, but I'm not sure Hasbro would allow it. So here are those two other things that I wanted to discuss before we really get into here. The first thing is the rules that I have for what I collect. The first rule, 1/12 scale. Well done, Legends, you got it. The second rule, gotta move like a human. The third rule, they need to be complete. They need to have all the fists and hands and all that stuff and weapons that make sense to go with those characters. And fourth, they need to be timeless comic book versions. Yeah, we don't want any figures in my collection that are like looks that maybe lasted 2 or 3 months. We're talking looks that last several years. So, with those rules out of the way, here's where we need to discuss even the realistic possibility of making these figures to this particular very picky collector's specifications when it comes to action figure photography. Now, for them to be something along the lines of, say, a Mafex figure, an SHF figure, they would need to come with a whole lot more than they do, and that would jack up the price quite a bit more. And at that point, you're thinking, well, is Hasbro going to target adults, or are they going to target kids? And right now, it looks like adults make up about 25% of the buyer's market when it comes to action figures, and kids maybe 75%, although I'm not sure that was an action figure stat. I believe that was a total toys stat. It could be larger for action figures, or it could be smaller, I'm not sure. But the point is, it looks like the future, from some of the research I've done, is really heavily weighted towards collectors picking up action figures, but today, it might be more that kids still get a lot more. So in order for Hasbro to make figures that I want to pick up for photogenic purposes, it might be cost prohibitive, to be very honest, because to come with everything I want them to come with, are mom and dad going to go into the aisles and spend, say, $50 or $60 on a figure and be totally cool with it? I'm not so sure they are. So I have to look at the reality when it comes to that stuff. Another thing, going back to the idea that I said originally, that I don't want to pick up stuff that's just constant repaints, is Marvel Legends seems to really need to invest in the MCU figures. Their MCU figures look great. I can't fault them at all for how good they look. But I have no interest in those figures, and so I have a feeling it's the MCU figures that allow for the comic book figures to be made. And if that's the case, it's no wonder there's constant reuse in the comic book line, but it's also why I don't really care so much to pick up the comic book line. Now, with all those things said, let's take it to the light box, and we'll talk about what else I'm talking about. Okay, first off, don't bust me too hard here for Logan, because even though it's not a timeless look, it's Wolverine, and Wolverine's my boy, so of course I needed to grab this bad boy. Besides, we all have exceptions to our rules. If you look at G.I. Joe Classified, in fact, they're not at all complete figures. But I still load up on them because, frankly, nostalgia is a hell of a drug. Now, while I have you here, if you go to Entertainment Earth and you pick up a bunch of in-stock stuff and you enter the code Toypixx, you'll get 10% off the in-stock stuff, and if you spend $39 or more, you'll get free shipping. So, shop and save money and help me build my Cobra Army, speaking of G.I. Joe Classified. But, here we go, let's get into this. Now, we talked about 1/12 scale. Wolverine does it pretty well here. I'm okay with that. We talked about moving like a person. Now here is where there's the big time sin that Marvel Legends commits that I don't think any other line in Hasbro commits, which is why I look at this and I think to myself, why are Legends still doing this? So, it's very simple. The waist. That waist cut right there. It drives me crazy. That is not how a human moves, and it drives me absolutely nuts. It is probably the one thing that if Legends were to get rid of that waist cut, I would be far more likely to buy more of those every year. It's that one thing that really stops me. Now, if we also talk about complete figures, this figure actually does it better than most. He came with an extra set of hands, he came with an extra head, he came with a sword. So he's doing okay. Now for him to be a truly complete figure, I would like him to maybe have fists and some relaxed hands as well. It would be nice if, as far as articulation were concerned, this one had some butterfly joints, though I know that Legends is improving that. So this one actually isn't too bad. For just a little bit more articulation, some better articulation, and a couple more sets of hands, I'd be really happy with this release. In fact, if they made his waist like they do the G.I. Joe Classified figures, then I'd probably be over the moon with this release if they just added a couple more pairs of hands. Also, I want you to know these are Can of Beams claws. These aren't what come out when it comes to Hasbro's claws. Hopefully they're able to make adjustments on that. But when I'm talking about things that I really want to see awesome when it comes to this stuff, those are some of the nitpicks. And for me, just that waist cut makes it so that Legends doesn't get hardly any of my money. And by contrast, and I should have grabbed a G.I. Joe figure, but of course I grabbed a Spider-Man here that's Mafex, but it's kind of the same deal at the waist. See that? How it kind of, you can rotate it in that way, spin it around like that, tilt it forward at the waist. It doesn't look like this is unnatural movement when you're using this, just like it doesn't look like it's unnatural movement on almost any of Hasbro's stuff. It is just Legends. It's almost like, and this is no knock against Dwight and the design team, it's very possible this is completely budget, and that Legends was making so much money on these kinds of molds that nobody wanted to rock the boat and change anything up. But it really is the fact that Legends, it feels like they almost got complacent when it came to their articulation scheme when everyone else passed them by, specifically when it comes to that waist. So the reason I wanted to make this video is because a while back I put up a poll where I asked which of these Hasbro lines is your favorite, and while G.I. Joe Classified won, I figured that those of you who are watching this might be biased because I'm biased. And of course you're going to be more talking about Classified and digging Classified because I'm more into Classified. So that made sense. So instead I wanted to look at what was second and what was third. And second was Marvel Legends. And I know there's a lot of Marvel Legends collectors out there, and I don't want you all to think I'm hating for hate's sake. I love Marvel. Marvel Legends was one of the very first lines that I really got into. I just want them to get to a point where I'm more thrilled to buy their stuff. But I'm not sure they're going to be able to because of what Hasbro allows and doesn't allow budget-wise. And with all that, I also want to say I am not here at all to knock anybody that collects Marvel Legends. That is probably the line with the most impressive collections out there that I've seen on the YouTubes. So you guys that are loving your Legends, keep loving your Legends. I love seeing the pictures of the collections and what you're able to do when it comes to photography, because it's just something I'm really not able to do. I've got work to do in that department. So, if you're digging content like this, go ahead and click subscribe and like the video if you do like the video. Dislike it if you don't, because either way, that helps the algorithm. And comment below and let me know, do you pick up Marvel Legends? And if not, why? And if so, why? Tell me all the things. I love hearing everybody's different perspectives. And with all that said, thanks again for watching. And until next time, have fun and happy snapping. See ya.